Okay, guys, let me share my screen. Okay, so we're going to go over nutrients and vitamins, minerals. It's going to be fairly quick. The list is there for you. I'm going to try to demonstrate a couple of patterns that you'll see in this, but it's really there for your reference. There'll be a couple of questions on the test, but nothing that you can't look up. So, and that's just kind of the idea anyway. Anytime, right? We live in a world where we can look up anything really fast. So I am not opposed to that. So there are two types of vitamins that we're going to talk about, fat soluble and water soluble. And they're both organic compounds. We find them in nature. We don't need very much amounts. We don't need them in very much amounts. However, we need them pretty consistently in our diet for this reason. They don't get stored really well in our bodies. So when we talk about vitamins and most minerals, we just don't store them well. So we have to pass them through our digestive tract, introduce them to our circulatory system through absorption. And then if our cells need them, we pick them up. If we don't need them, then we just get rid of them. So you need to introduce vitamins and minerals fairly frequently into the diet so that whenever we need a protein made or we have it available. And so once again, those vitamins and minerals are what's going to make those proteins unique. So when you get those amino acids being or those proteins being broken up into amino acids and remade, they need a vitamin or a mineral to give them the certain shape they need in order to perform the function that we're requiring of them. So let's go through the fat soluble. Your fat soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. And as you can see on the list here, and it follows the same pattern I've on these slides. The first bullet is the amount or in the different name that it may have and where they can be found. And in most cases, you're going to find them green leafy vegetables. Just about any case, you're going to find them in vegetables. You're going to find them in nuts, legumes. You're going to find them in animals. Vitamin A may be most famous for carrots. So there you are, but also most of your dark leafy vegetables. If then the second bullet is going to talk about what it does. So a lot of times it's easier to remember the side effects of it or the deficiency of it rather than what it does. So if you can remember in the deficiency, third bullet, that it gives you night blindness, introduces infections, impairs growth, impairs wound healing. If you can remember that, then obviously the opposite is true. Epithelial cells, mucous membranes, pigments of the eye. So I don't know how you like to think about these things, but you can memorize it in either direction. Okay. You can get too much. That's the fourth bullet of this vitamin A in particular. So this is excess, and then it'll show you what can happen if you take too much of this. It's really hard to get this if you eat a normal diet in abundance, although you probably have heard stories where kids have eaten too many carrots and turned orange. They get an orange tinge to their skin. That can be possible. But they're going to feel sick too. Vitamin K or A will make you feel sick. So anyway, that's the kind of way you're going to work through these slides. So you're going to see what it is, where you can find it, and then the what it does for you, the deficiency, and then of course if there is an excess, some there isn't. Some you can take as much as you want, and you'll find that those vitamins and minerals that you can take as much as you want, there's no excess. Then usually those are the ones they use to fortify in breakfast cereals and breads and things like that. Okay, vitamin D. Found in liver, fish, eggs. You can read it. Lots of in sunlight. So this is the stuff we get when we go outside. We don't tend to have this problem or this deficiency here in Arizona. We get plenty of vitamin D. This vitamin D increases calcium absorption. So this is really important to remember. This is also why when you look at your milk container, it says fortified with vitamin D. They're already putting it in there so that when milk is introduced to you, the vitamin D binds with amino acids, forms an enzyme that helps you absorb calcium. There you go. So now you know how you get calcium in there. So if you have a deficiency, obviously, if you have low vitamin D, you have low calcium uptake, and then you have bone weakness. We can also say rickets, and we'll look at the rickets here in a bit. You can get too much vitamin D, nauseousness, loss of appetite. Vitamin E is another fat soluble. Some of you may be familiar with this one. It's a great defender against free radicals, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, and it protects cell membranes. So this is a really nice one to help with your immune function. I've also seen people use these capsules, open them up, and put vitamin E directly on scar tissue, and especially new scar tissue. It tends to soften it, and so you don't what we call keloid as badly. But if you do that, just know that you'll have to protect your scar from direct sunlight. So make sure that you're covering that scar if you're doing it. You can get some deficiencies if you're not getting enough vitamin E. You get hemolysis, and you can also, which will lead to some anemia issues. So basically, hemolysis means that the red blood cell doesn't stay intact. So, and that'll lead to anemia. Once you also notice, I think anemia is a big one that we come up with when we talk about deficiencies, especially iron. But if you look at a lot of these, they have some influence on anemia. So it may not be just iron intake, right? It could be other ones as well. Vitamin K, the last of the four fat soluble foreign blood clotting factors. Of course, the deficiency then would be bleeding and hemorrhage, and you can get thrombosis and vomiting if you take too much vitamin K. So they won't necessarily fortify this and stuff. You don't need a lot of it, micrograms, 120 micrograms, so not very much at all. So way less than I might even tiny. Water soluble, there's a bunch. Now, I'm not going to go through each one like I just did. I want you to just kind of see the pattern, and then whether or not they're toxic effects. Now, the B vitamins, they'll be listed as B1, 2, and 5, 6, 12. So know that they usually come together, right? We don't usually just get one B1 from that particular potato and B2 from that other one. They tend to come in groups, so we call them the B complexes. And so when you if you're getting one B, you're probably getting some of the others as well. A lot of these are going to be what they call coenzymes. In other words, they're going to help with a protein that helps. They're usually more than one enzyme that helps either break down or create something. And so B vitamins and most of your vitamins will help with coenzyme of function. So when we're making and breaking, then they work together to do that. If you look at B1, though, this is kind of one you want to jump out at you, is that promotes carbohydrate metabolism and the central nervous system function. So this is really important for neural synapse function. It does require a little bit of energy to get that stuff going and to reset some of the neural functions that happen once we send signals. And that requires B1 to metabolize that carbohydrate in order to do that. So this one's really important for the nervous systems there. Therefore, when you see this thiamine deficiency, which is a B1 deficiency, it's something called beriberi. They have really twitchy movements. They tend to waste away. This is usually caused by malnutrition. Okay, B2, as you can read, has a coenzyme for fat and FMN, which also help with metabolism of carbohydrates and fats. And so once again, important when we're fueling ourselves, right, to make sure that we have enough vitamins to create those proteins to help getting that fuel to where it needs to go and breaking down the carbohydrate in order to get that into the right place. No toxic effects for B2, so you'll see riboflavin in a lot of our products, especially cereals. B3 niacin, you may have heard this one. Also a coenzyme for NAD and NAPD, which is it's a metabolizer of carbohydrates in a non-aerobic state. Not that you need to know that, but when there's no oxygen in there, this helps break down that. It also helps break down fat oxidation. It also is a main helper in healthy skin. So a lot of pellagra is one of them that you can get. This is a breakdown of the skin because of the lack of niacin. There are some toxic effects to niacin, but they're not, I mean, you'd have to take a lot of it to get that toxic effect. Okay, B6, you may or may not have heard of this one. But this was an interesting one because this may have more of an effect on anemia than probably even iron does. So when you look at what it does, it's formation of hemoglobin and red blood cells. So this is super important when it comes to making sure that your red blood cells are forming correctly and that they're binding with oxygen. And if you talk to doctors about anemia, they may steer you towards iron, but it may be B6. Now, here's the thing. Some people have a hard time absorbing B6, so they can put it in their mouth, they can chew it, they can get it in their digestive tract, but it doesn't cross that border into the circulatory system. People who have anemic issues and are doing fine with iron intake, it may be B6 and it may be that you're not absorbing it well. Just something to think about. If you or someone you know may be anemic and they can't seem to solve it with iron intake, it may be a B6 issue. A lot of folks will take this through a shot and put it directly into their into the circulatory system that way, instead of trying to eat it, and that helps a lot. So yeah, it's just something to think about. B12, there's no toxic effect to this one, so you may see this one fortified in cereals as well. This is a really important one for healthy DNA and RNA, so keep an eye on B12. It's everywhere, so, and we don't need a ton of it. 2.4 on the UG is micrograms, so you have milligrams here with mg, and then you have micrograms, which are UG. I don't know whether I think it's not quite a U as much as the symbol. So there you go. All right, folic acid is a really important one. I've started on this thing so that you kind of keep an eye on it. You can get it in. You don't need a lot of it. You can get it in just about anything you eat, including foods, grains, legumes, nuts. It's really important for coenzyme for DNA and RNA as well, especially in fetal development. This is the one, folic acid, you might make a note of this, is the one that they really encourage women who are pregnant to consume so that their baby is healthy. So folic acid, super important. Biotin, there's no toxic effect on this one. You can find it just about everywhere. You don't need much of it at all. It helps with the CO2 transfer, and then it does promote some carbohydrate and fat and protein metabolism. So look for this one when we look at people marketing things for fat burn. Sometimes they throw biotin in it. We just don't need very much of it. There's no toxic effect. So this is why you'll sometimes see it thrown into products for stacked in a product that claims to help burn fat. Pantothenic acid is your B5. Once again, energy metabolism, about 5 milligrams of it. You can get just about everything. There isn't any toxic effects. So you may even find this one that it's fortified and other things. So vitamin C is the big one. Everybody knows about vitamin C. It's a great antioxidant. I'm hoping that you're thinking, oh, antioxidants. The other one is vitamin E. So I want you to kind of remember those guys. That's going to become important, especially with cold and flu season upon us. The thing is if you start to feel a cold and flu come on and then you just load yourself up with vitamin C, you may be just kind of getting behind a little bit, right? So the idea is to make sure that you're getting a good dose of vitamins every day. Not so much that obviously you reach a toxic effect, but if you're not getting it in a normal diet, and you'll hear me say this 100 times, you might consider just taking a vitamin supplement, a good multivitamin that has these essentials in it. So keep an eye on vitamin C. I think it's pretty popular. I think that most of us kind of know. You can take too much of this. I'll tell you a quick story. I had an athlete who wasn't feeling well, and we had some vitamin C in a big jar in the training room here. This was years and years ago. And so I took the vitamin C. I wrote on the plastic bag, take one, chew one each morning, one per day. And I gave him the bag. There was probably 30 of them in there. I saw him the next day and he was feeling so sick. He was having diarrhea and he thinks I'm getting worse. And I said, all right, I'm sorry that you're getting worse. Have you been taking your vitamin C? Have you been sleeping enough? Have you been drinking? Yeah, man, I took that whole bag of vitamin C. So the poor guy apparently didn't read the instructions or hear me say, you only take one a day, but he took over about a 12-hour period, 830 vitamin C tabs. That's not good. Each one was like 120% of the recommended daily allowance. So it was bad. and he had diarrhea for a couple of days, but we flushed him out. We gave him plenty of fluids and kept an eye on him, but you can take too much. And anyway, one of those days. All right, vitamin intake for athletes. Once again, here's the key, bullet number 1 up there. If you're getting enough calories and you're getting it from a lot of different foods, then you're probably fine when it comes to vitamin intake. Here's the problem. Most of your athletes don't, right? They have long days, they skip meals, they eat late, they don't eat much because they're tired. There's just a crazy, weird diet thing going on with most of your athletes. So here's the thing. If that's the case, I highly recommend that they do some sort of multivitamin supplement, only because they're not getting it in their numeral. If they're already in calorie deficit, then they're going to be in vitamin and mineral deficit as well. So not necessarily, supplement isn't necessary if they're eating a well-balanced diet, but how many athletes do you know that do? I don't know a whole ton. So there is some factors that you need to consider: their age, their gender, their height, their weight. So you kind of look at that too, and that varies for RDA. Look on the bottle, and one of your assignments is to come up with a vitamin from a manufacturer that's already being made that you would give to your athletes. Look at that bottle, and most of them are based on like a 1,800 to 2,000 calorie a day diet. You may have a bigger athlete that needs a little bit more, so you might have them take it twice a day, 1 in the morning, 1 at night, or just depends, right? So understand that the intake does depend on the person still. So I want you to look at the 3rd bullet. These are your at-risk athletes, and we're going to add to this list female adolescents with low body weight. Typically, they turn out to be our gymnasts, our long-distance runners. There's a word that I want you to kind of remember, and we'll get to it here again later, called amenorrhea, and that's when we miss females miss 3 periods in a row, their menstrual cycle 3 times in a row, 3 months in a row. So if they're amenorrheic, it's usually due to diet, and that would obviously indicate that they're not getting enough vitamins and minerals, as well as not enough calories. So those are your at-risk athletes that tend to be female adolescents who are cutting weight, either for, and you can throw cheerleaders on there too at times, but certainly gymnasts and long-distance female athletes, runners. You can also hear it from male wrestlers. So keep an eye on male wrestlers too. All right, so the difference, we're going to look at macro and micro minerals at the same as well. So here is their organic compounds as well. We can break them down into macro and mineral or micro, which are also considered trace elements. So they're just really small. That's what that means. We tend to consider these electrolytes. They tend to be part of that macronutrient group. The famous ones, the popular ones, are potassium, sodium, and chloride. You probably even throw magnesium in there. Those are the 3 or 4 that are fairly popular, considered electrolytes. They're macronutrients. We know of at least 20 minerals and 14 trace elements that are known to be essential for health. Here's the thing. Once again, normal diet, that you're eating lots of different varieties of foods. And in other words, when I say that, I mean not top ramen every day or peanut butter every day. So if it's the same, if you're eating the same things every day, then obviously you're not going to get exposed to these other vitamins and minerals. You're going to get the same old ones over and over again. If that's the case, and that's all you can do, then I would recommend a multivitamin. So here they are, and I'm going to go through these fairly quickly as well. They're set up the same way. You can look through them. Calcium tends to be a big one. Remember, with calcium, it's not just about bones. Calcium is also a major mineral when it comes to flooding the muscle cell and releasing the bound ATP, right? So where the actin and myosin are bound, right? That makes the muscle contraction. We do this all the time. And when we talk about calcium, I think it's underplayed. It has a lot to do with muscle contraction. And therefore, it's used a lot. So if we're not providing our body with a pretty consistent, intake of something that has calcium in it, we're going to start to leach it from our bones. So will lead to osteoporosis and things like that. Therefore, you see the deficiency. Okay, chlorine, you may understand or recognize. Chlorine is usually bound with sodium, so we get sodium chloride, which is table salt. This is really important with nerve conduction, so we get plenty of this. We absorb it super well. Right, there you go, 90 to 99% absorption. We do this really well, and we get it in everything we eat, and we add it to our foods as well. Magnesium may be the one sneaking up on us. There's some studies out there right now that look at muscle cramping in athletes, and they found that the major culprit is magnesium, which is interesting because we tend to give our athletes salts, right? We give them pickle juice, we give them ketchup, things like that to increase what we think is salt content. And it may just be that they're low on magnesium. There's a study going on, and they should be finishing up because it's been a couple of years since I listened to the researchers. They're on a panel discussion, and the question was, should we make sure our athletes are consuming more electrolytes? What's the main culprit here? And their study, this is what they do. When an athlete goes start to get a cramp, they've signed a waiver that if it's in practice, they'll pull them aside and draw their blood while they're in that cramped state, so they can see what their blood is doing or what's in their blood. And is that crazy? So, and before they relieve them of the cramp, they draw blood. And that's part of the study. They've signed up for it, which is kind of cool, I guess. But, I'm sure the athlete didn't consider that when they signed up. They were going to be in pain for a few minutes while they draw blood for them. Anyway, they found that it's magnesium and not so much salt. So there you go. Potassium, you can find this one in bananas, I think is the most popular fruit. Membrane potential, a lot of this has to do with nerve conduction. Once again, when we talk about electrolytes, I know that we think electrolytes and we think that we need to replace them because of hydration and this and that. Totally true. Has a lot to do with the way our brain communicates with our muscles, and it does that through obviously the nervous system. And without electrolytes on board, we're not either conducting well and telling our muscles what to do, or we're not relieving the contraction like we're supposed to, because a lot of these electrolytes will open up channels within the cell that help calcium flood through and other things to get into the cell to do some work. So there's a sodium ion channel. There's a couple other ion channels that open up within the cell to let other substances, nutrients in to either take care of muscle contraction or whatever it has to do. Anyway, so potassium is pretty important. We obviously know that. Phosphorus, once again, DNA, RNA, cell membrane issues. This helps form a buffer in muscle contraction. And when we look at the lactic acid formation, this helps buffer it. Phosphorus helps buffer it. Helps with bone formation as well. Phosphorus is one of those where we need 700 milligrams, which is quite a bit, but we get it in just about everything. It's one of those that we kind of overlook. It's well absorbed, so we tend not to have a problem with phosphorus because it's just about in everything we eat, including the things that aren't necessarily good for us, like soft drinks. So we tend not to be deficient in phosphorus. Sodium, we talked about this one. Find it with chlorine, get sodium chloride, table salt. You can have some issues with this if you get too much, and in the standard American diet, we get too much. So sodium, I think, are pretty well known. Some of the microminerals, I'm going to go through these. Actually, I am going to go through these fairly quickly because we need them in such small amounts and we get them pretty easily. Also look on these screens for the women. Women need sometimes more or less than men. Probably, it just depends what it is. So. Chromium is also with insulin, so you'll see this one as a supplement in health food stores to say that it's going to help cure diabetes, or at least help with it. There's some studies out there in chromium. We'll see that in another chapter. They did some studies with cobalt in sheep, and they looked at bone development, and the one on the left without cobalt, one on the right nice and tall with it. You can see that it's not just in the legs, but it's the spine. Look what it does to the neck. That weight of the head really draws those bones down and get malformation. So cobalt's pretty interesting. We don't need a ton of it, and we get it in most meats that we eat. It's part of that, like it says here, with vitamin B12. So we get a little bit of it each time. But once again, interesting studies with cobalt. we get enough of it. Copper, once again, don't need much here either. It's not absorbed super well. We get it in most of the foods we eat that grow out of the ground. It's naturally occurring. So that's copper. Go lick a rock out here in Safford. It's all over the place. You get copper that way. All right, iodine. This one is in with our table salt. It's iodized salt, typically, if you look at your container. And the big deficiency here is a depressed thyroid. I'm sorry, the deficiency is a excited thyroid, and that's a picture on your right. It's called a goiter. With the goiter, what happens is it makes the thyroid not work as well, and so you get all kinds of issues. And in this case, if you have a hyperthyroidism, you'll have tremendous weight loss. If your thyroid isn't working as well, you may gain weight. So it just depends on how it goes. Iodine, we need it in small amounts where this is put in our salt. So we tend not to have the problems with this as much. Iron, I think, is pretty well known. When we look at iron, we talk about anemia mostly. Once again, recall back with the vitamins, there are others, B6, for example, and others that are main players too. So it's not always just iron. Zinc is an interesting one. I have the students in class look at their nail beds. So just look at the nails, and you can see it at the bottom of the screen here. If you have a little white line in there, and I don't mean at the very, very tips, that's just the nail that's, no longer in contact with the surface of the skin. But if you have little white marks in there, you might have been zinc deficient at one point in the creation of that nail. And typically it's in the center here somewhere. It'll eventually grow right out, but that may give you an indication that you're a little low on zinc. All right, so mineral intake in athletes. Men tend to meet the needs because of their normal diet. Women tend to need more iron, zinc, magnesium, and calcium. So when I was an athletic trainer here at Eastern, I would talk to the coaches and try to get them to get them a multivitamin, get their athletes a multivitamin, and then we're good, right? So it was difficult, but some of them did it, and it worked out okay. So some of the important vitamins that we talked about, antioxidants, and the reason I put these here, sometimes it shows up on your test, but more importantly, these are the ones that you want to make sure that you're getting in pretty often, right? You're eating them or consuming. Because what we're trying to do is get rid of these free radicals. And this is produced with just normal everyday work, muscle contraction, especially eccentric contraction. We tend to create these things called free radicals. And left unchecked, free radicals can mess up our body, right? They influence cellular function. So we want to introduce antioxidants to try to combat those and to bind with them and take them out of our body so that we don't so that we have smooth running, and healthy bodies. So just what I said right here, we got to make sure that we're going to work out. We're going to work out hard. That's fine, but make sure you're getting plenty of antioxidants, which are within your normal diet, and it'll help keep your body running efficiently. The nasty ones are called ROS, or reactive oxygen species, and ROS are produced with normal aerobic work. They also are produced with too much ultraviolet light. In other words, you're out in the sun too much, alcohol, cigarette, high-fat diets, and in recent studies, we looked at high fructose corn syrup as a cause to increase ROS, which is a free radical. Too much ROS is really bad for our bodies, so we got to really be careful. Once again, taking a supplement of vitamins and minerals or eating a good wholesome diet with plenty of fruits and vegetables is really, really good. And this is kind of just a picture of how those oxidants work. They can either be in the cell or outside the cell. Most of the work with these antioxidants occurs within the cell, but you can get some that are outside the cell within the circulatory system, which is great. And we like that. Here's the thing. If you're looking for antioxidants, fruits and vegetables that are bright, colorful, those tend to be rich in antioxidants. So your blueberries and your blackberries and cranberries, and not so much bananas, although they're okay. Spinach and your really green, dark vegetables. Prolonged deficiencies are the ones that are harder to track, right? So you usually don't see a deficiency in somebody who's got a poor diet for weeks or months. And so it's a little bit hard to catch them up. So we got to make sure that if we're exercising, or if we know somebody who is, that they're right now starting to keep those vitamins and minerals in their bodies by having a healthy diet or supplementing those vitamins and minerals. So a couple tricks of the trade. Sardines are really, really good for calcium uptake. So nasty, but if you like sardines, that's great. So there's other ways to do it other than milk. You can eat fish with bones like sardines. Some soy products, you can get it in there too. And eat green leafy vegetables that are high in calcium as well. All right, so no anemia. I put that up there because it's not just iron. Consider the other ones, the vitamins and minerals. Know what an antioxidant is and how to describe what the food looks like, right? Bright, colorful, rich in color kind of thing. Understand that what electrolytes do, a lot of it was within the nervous system. We're talking about sodium, potassium, chlorine, and magnesium. Free radicals and reactive oxygen species will also probably be, will definitely be on the test. So make sure you know those as well. All right, you guys, you're cruising on into the finish line here. So keep going strong. Holler at me if you have any questions, and keep up the good work.